Blaze wouldn't move. Not for the command, not for the supervisor, not for the crowd backing up behind them. Every scanner in Terminal C had cleared that man. Every machine, every agent, every protocol said he was clean. But the dog planted himself in front of one passenger and refused to take a single step. And when they finally dragged that carry-on into the screening room and opened it, it didn't explode in fire. It exploded in truth. Before we show you what was inside that bag, and the moment the entire terminal froze, drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I read every single one. Subscribe with the bell icon turned on, because what happened next changed everything. The shift started like every other one. Ryan Holt clocked in at 6:02 a.m., laced his boots the same way he always did, left boot first, then right, drank half a cup of coffee standing over the break room sink, and walked out to find Blaze already waiting at the kennel gate, tail flicking once, amber eyes locked on the door like he'd been ready for an hour. Ryan was 25 years old, 3 years on the K-9 unit. Dark brown hair cut short above the ears, Navy uniform pressed, badge centered. Every piece of his duty belt exactly where it needed to be. He'd been told more than once that he looked too young for the job. He'd stopped responding to that comment about 18 months in. He unlatched the gate, and Blaze came out clean and quiet. No spin, no bark, no drama. Just forward movement, nose already working the air before they'd even reached the corridor. That was the thing about Blaze. Other dogs announced themselves. Blaze simply began. They moved through Terminal C's lower level the same way they always did. Food court sweep first, then exit corridors, then the pre-screening lanes along the north wall. Ryan kept his stride loose, unhurried. Blaze moved beside him with that particular rhythm, not trotting, not rushing, just reading. Ears up, nose low, tail relaxed, but never swinging. Officer Deanna Marsh was posted near the coffee kiosk and nodded as they passed. "Your dog looks like he already knows something you don't." Ryan glanced down at Blaze. "He usually does." They moved on. The pre-check lanes were filling up. Business travelers mostly, laptops out before the belt even started moving. Shoes off, lanyards looped around wrists. Faces blank with the kind of patience that comes from doing this twice a week, every week, for years. Ryan had learned to read the regulars by posture alone. Slouch and earbuds meant domestic. Rolling carry-on with a second bag meant connecting flight. Suit jacket folded over the arm instead of packed meant someone who cared how they looked when they landed. He was halfway through the lane when Blaze stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. All 4 legs planted, tail dropping from neutral to straight. Head lifting and angling forward at something Ryan hadn't identified yet. Ryan kept his voice low. "Blaze, heel." Nothing. The dog's nostrils flared twice in quick succession. His ears shifted forward, locking onto a point in the crowd about 40 feet ahead in the pre-check line. Ryan followed the line of sight. Travelers. Carry-ons. Nothing out of place visually. A man in a light jacket near the front of the line, mid-40s maybe. Bag pressed flat against his ribs like a second skin. Hair too neat for this hour. Smile that appeared and disappeared the way a light flickers when the wiring isn't quite right. "Blaze, come on, bud. Heel." The dog took 1 step forward and stopped again. Head tilted up slightly. Breath slowing. Ryan's gut tightened before his brain caught up. He'd worked with Blaze long enough to know the difference between a dog distracted by a food smell and a dog actively processing something invisible. This wasn't distraction. This was concentration. He moved up beside his partner and kept his own posture easy. Calm voice, slow body, nothing that would shift the energy in the room. "What do you have?" Blaze didn't look at him. His eyes stayed fixed on the man in the light jacket. Ryan started moving toward the lane, unhurried, one hand loose at his side. He positioned himself at the edge of the checkpoint and let Blaze set the pace. The dog moved with him, nose lifting and dipping, pulling information from the recycled terminal air that Ryan could never hope to access. They were 10 feet from the man when Blaze stopped a second time, and this time it was different. Different enough that Ryan felt it through the leash like a current. Rigid. Completely rigid. 4 legs anchored. Tail at absolute zero. And a low sound began in the dog's chest. Not a growl, not a bark. Something more measured than either of those. A frequency that seemed to come from somewhere deep and certain. The man in the light jacket looked over. He saw Blaze first, then Ryan. His face moved through 3 expressions in about a second and a half. Surprise, reassessment, then the practiced smile snapping into place like a mask clicking shut. "Is there a problem, officer?" Ryan kept his voice level. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to step to the side for just a moment." "I'm in the pre-check line. I have global entry." "Yes, sir. This will only take a moment." The man's hand tightened on the strap of his carry-on. Ryan saw it happen. So did Blaze. The dog's head dropped an inch, eyes still locked, and the sound in his chest deepened. "Is this really necessary? I have a connection to catch." "What's your destination today, sir?" "Seattle. Business." "Who packed your bag?" A beat of hesitation, thin as paper, but there. "I did. Myself." Blaze took one step forward, deliberate, surgical. He placed his body directly in the man's path and sat down. The lane behind them had stalled. A woman with 2 kids stepped back instinctively. A man in a suit lifted his phone and then seemed to think better of it. The ambient hum of the terminal continued. Boarding announcements, belt motors, a child somewhere asking a question in a high, clear voice. But around this one checkpoint, something had gone very still. TSA. Supervisor Aaron Chen appeared from the side corridor, arms crossed before he even reached them. "Halt! What's the holdup?" "Behavioral alert." Blaze flagged the passenger. Chen looked at the man, looked at Blaze, looked at the backed-up line of 20-plus travelers now craning their necks. His voice dropped. "Nothing's been found. Nothing's been scanned yet. The pre-check scanners already ran his boarding pass. Boarding pass doesn't tell me what Blaze is reading." Chen stepped closer, keeping his voice low enough that only Ryan could hear it. "You are backing up a lane at 6 in the morning on a Friday. You understand what that means for the next 2 hours?" Ryan looked at his dog. Blaze hadn't moved a millimeter. "I understand what it means if I pull him off and I'm wrong about pulling him off." Chen exhaled through his nose. He turned to the passenger with the professional calm of someone who'd managed 100 of these situations. "Sir, I'm going to ask you to step out of the line and accompany us to a secondary screening area. It should take no more than a few minutes." The man's jaw tightened. "This is profiling." "No, sir. This is protocol." "I haven't done anything." "Nobody said you did." Chen kept his voice perfectly flat. "But the dog disagrees. And in this terminal, the dog gets a vote." The man looked down at Blaze. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not anger. Something closer to calculation. He looked at the line of people behind him. Some watching openly now. A few holding phones just below shoulder height, pretending to check messages. "Fine," he said, "but I want your badge numbers." Ryan gave his without hesitation. Chen did the same. They moved toward the inspection corridor, Ryan and Blaze flanking left, Chen and the second officer on the right. The man walked with a particular stiffness of someone fighting the urge to look over his shoulder. His carry-on rode pressed against his chest instead of hanging loose at his side. Ryan noticed. He filed it. Inside the screening corridor, away from the open terminal, The air changed. Quieter. Brighter. The kind of overhead lighting that makes everything look like evidence. A third officer met them at the door to room B3, a white-walled secondary inspection space with an X-ray belt along one wall and a single metal chair bolted to the floor near the opposite corner. The passenger sat when directed. He placed his carry-on on the belt when instructed. His movements were controlled, deliberate, like a man who had rehearsed this. Blaze moved immediately to the side of the scanner table and sat, not close enough to interfere, not far enough to break contact. He wasn't sniffing the bag. He wasn't growling. He was watching it with the focused patience of something that already knew the answer and was waiting for the humans to catch up. "Go ahead and run it," Ryan said to the tech. The belt hummed to life. The carry-on slid through. Everyone in the room looked at the monitor. The grayscale image that bloomed across the screen was wrong in a way that didn't announce itself loudly. It was wrong in the quiet way of something designed to look ordinary from the outside, while being anything but on the inside. Dense layers, a rectangular block too precisely shaped to be clothing, wiring coiled through its center in tight, deliberate patterns, and along the edges, faint signatures pulsing in uneven intervals that the tech identified in a flat, careful voice. "Thermal variance. It's not uniform." Chen leaned forward. "Explosive?" The tech shook his head slowly. "No detected explosive signature." Ryan's voice was quiet. "No detected signature." The room understood the difference. The passenger was watching their faces. Ryan had worked enough shifts to know what innocent people looked like when machines were scanning their bags. They looked annoyed, or impatient, or bored. They did not look like this man looked. He was watching their faces the way someone watches a door they're not sure will stay closed. "Sir," Ryan said, "is there something you want to tell us before we open that bag?" The man's hands pressed together between his knees. He was quiet for 5 full seconds. "Please don't open it wrong," he said finally. Chen straightened. "Excuse me?" "If you open it wrong, you'll destroy the evidence." Nobody in the room spoke. Blaze let out a single breath through his nose. Not a bark, not a growl. Just air, slow and even, like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment, and now the moment had arrived. Ryan looked at the man in the chair. "What evidence?" The man opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes moved to Blaze, and something that might have been relief moved across his face so quickly it was almost possible to miss. "I need you to understand," he said quietly, "that I planned to get caught. I just didn't plan for the dog." Behind them, Supervisor Chen already had his radio up. The bomb squad was 3 minutes out. Silent lockdown protocols were activating across 2 gates in Terminal C, with the soft mechanical thunk of automated barriers and the slow pulse of overhead strobes going red. And in the middle of all of it, Blaze sat beside the scanner, with a carry-on resting on the belt in front of him, amber eyes forward, breathing slow, absolutely certain about something the rest of the room was only just beginning to understand. The bomb squad technician's name was Garrett, and he moved through the door of room B3 like a man who had stopped being afraid of things a long time ago. Full protective gear, visor down, voice clipped and flat through the filtered mic. "Everyone clear the room. Handler and K9 out first." Ryan didn't move. "Blaze hasn't signaled threat-level aggression. I'm staying." Garrett looked at him for a moment, then gave a short nod and waved the others toward the hallway. Supervisor Chen hesitated at the door, looking between the strobes blinking red overhead and Blaze sitting motionless beside the scanner belt. Then he stepped out without a word. The passenger, whose name Ryan still didn't know, sat rigid in the corner chair. His hands were pressed flat against his knees now. He wasn't watching the bomb squad technician. He was watching Blaze. Garrett wheeled in a portable blast containment curtain and set it up between the carry-on and the rest of the room with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 500 times. Then he positioned the mechanical retrieval arm, locked it onto the carry-on's frame, and looked over at Ryan. "On my mark, you hold the dog." Ryan put his hand on Blaze's back. The dog's muscles were coiled tight beneath his palm. Not with fear, with focus. Every tendon and fiber pointing at that bag like a compass needle that had found true north and refused to wobble. "I told you," the passenger said from the corner. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Please, don't open it wrong." Garrett's voice came through the mic, flat and unhurried. "Sir, stop talking." The mechanical arm latched the lock. A soft click. Then the zipper began to peel. Ryan's hand pressed down on Blaze's back. "Easy, easy, bud." The bag opened, and the room erupted. Not fire, not pressure, not the concussive silence that comes after an explosion. Something none of them had any frame of reference for. A violent, churning cloud of black mechanical wings, dozens of microdrones no larger than a man's fist, bursting upward in every direction at once, propellers screaming, red sensor lights blinking like a swarm of eyes that had just been woken up angry. One slammed into the fluorescent fixture directly overhead. Sparks rained down. A second spun wildly into the wall, ricocheted, and buzzed straight toward Ryan's face. He ducked. Blaze didn't. The dog launched himself off the floor with a single explosive movement, 6 feet straight up, jaws snapping shut on the drone mid-flight. The plastic casing cracked like a gunshot. Blaze landed clean, shook the debris from his mouth, and was already tracking the next one before the pieces hit the floor. "Containment breach!" Garrett was shouting into his radio. "Multiple units airborne! Repeat, multiple units mobile and active!" Ryan was on his feet, eyes sweeping the room. Most of the drones had destabilized on impact with the walls and ceiling, spinning erratically, crashing into surfaces. But two were moving with purpose. Not bouncing, not spiraling. Moving in a controlled, deliberate line toward the gap at the bottom of the door. "They're going for the terminal!" Ryan grabbed his radio. "All units, Terminal C, active breach, airborne microdrones exiting room B, 3. 2 units mobile and heading into the concourse. Do not let them reach open Wi-Fi." He looked at Blaze. One word. Track. The leash dropped from his hand, and Blaze was already through the door. Ryan followed at a full sprint, dodging a startled TSA officer in the hallway, clearing a luggage cart by inches, his boots hammering the tile, as Blaze pulled ahead with the fluid, ground-eating stride of a dog that had been built for exactly this. The terminal was filling up. It was past 7 now, and the morning wave had arrived. Families with strollers, business travelers moving in tight, purposeful clusters. A school group near Gate 9 that hadn't been briefed on anything and was just standing there looking confused. The PA system had gone quiet. No announcements. Gate agents were slowing their boarding processes without explanation, buying time, trying not to spark a panic. Ryan could see it wasn't going to hold long. Blaze cut hard left past the juice kiosk near the central corridor, nose working, body low. Then he stopped, looked up, and Ryan followed his gaze. One drone, hovering close to a curved lighting fixture above Gate 14, wings beating in a tight, controlled rhythm. Red sensor eye sweeping slow arcs across the crowd below. Scanning. Still scanning. Ryan's radio crackled. "Command to Holt. That unit is actively capturing data. Facial recognition protocol appears engaged." Ryan's jaw locked. Every face that drone swept was being cataloged. Every passenger standing in line at Gate 14. every parent lifting a child, every elderly traveler waiting in a wheelchair near the boarding door. Blaze didn't wait for a command. He backed up 4 steps, measured and deliberate, then exploded forward, hit the edge of the kiosk counter with one paw, launched himself upward, and his jaws closed around the drone with a sound like a gunshot. He hit the floor, rolling, came up clean, and shook the crushed unit from his mouth. 1 down. Halt! The radio again. Second unit, Concourse A, moving toward the departure boards above the north escalators. It's not just scanning anymore. It's transmitting. Ryan was already moving. How long does it have? 30 seconds of feed time, and the upload is complete. After that, it doesn't matter if you catch it. He ran. Blaze ran beside him, matching his stride, ears pinned back, eyes forward. They came around the corner at the escalator bank, and Ryan saw it immediately. The second drone, pressing itself tight against the back of the large LED departure board. A thin data cable, trailing from its underbody into an open access port in the board's frame. It was transmitting right now. Blaze, hold! Ryan assessed the angle. The drone was 12 feet up, tucked behind the screen's housing, partially shielded. A direct jump risked knocking it loose in the wrong direction. Then it moved. Slow at first, then with sudden intentionality, inching toward the left edge of the departure board, where a ventilation shaft gaped open in the wall behind the screen. If it reached that shaft, it would drop into the terminal's duct system. Unreachable. Gone. And the upload would complete while it traveled. Ryan's voice came out sharp. It's going for the vent. Blaze, if it gets in there... Blaze was already reading the geometry. He didn't look at where the drone was. He looked at where the drone was going to be. His head tilted once, calculating, and then his body shifted left by 3 feet and coiled. 4 seconds. The drone's propellers accelerated. 3. Ryan's hands balled into fists at his sides. 2. Blaze launched himself at an angle Ryan had never seen him use before. Not straight at the target, but on a diagonal intercept, body twisting midair, and his jaws closed on the drone 1 inch from the vent's opening. He hit the platform edge hard, rolled once, came to rest with the crushed drone still locked between his teeth. The terminal went completely silent for 1 full second. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else. Then the sound spread like a wave through the concourse. Passengers who hadn't fully understood what they'd witnessed, but understood the dog, the snap, the fall, and the stillness that followed. Ryan reached Blaze at the top of the escalator, dropped to 1 knee, and put both hands on the dog's chest. Blaze was panting, tail flicking once, amber eyes still scanning the air above them out of pure habit. "You're not just a dog," Ryan said quietly. "You're our firewall." His radio crackled. "Command to all units. Both rogue devices accounted for. Area secure. Confirmed containment." Ryan exhaled, slow, all the way out. Then the radio crackled again. Not command this time. A different voice, tighter, lower. Agent Mara Lind from Homeland Security, who had arrived at the airport 17 minutes ago and had been running silent in the background of the whole operation. "Holt, we've pulled the recovered drone memory fragments. Partial data is intact." A pause that lasted exactly 1 beat too long. "You need to bring the passenger to Suite 4 in the operations wing, right now, because what those drones were doing in this terminal is not what anyone in that room thinks it was." Ryan stood. He looked at Blaze, who was already looking back at him, ears forward, fully ready, like the shift had never broken stride. Whatever they had stopped today, it wasn't a bomb threat. It wasn't a theft. It wasn't anything that fit the categories on any TSA incident report he had ever filled out. And the man sitting in that chair in room B3, the man who had said, "I planned to get caught," He knew exactly what it was. Suite 4 in the operations wing was nothing like room B3. Smaller. No belt, no scanner, no equipment. Just a table, 4 chairs, and the kind of silence that settles in when the people in a room all know the next few minutes are going to matter. Agent Mara Lind was already there when Ryan walked in with the passenger. She was mid-40s, dark blazer, hair pulled back, the kind of face that gave nothing away for free. She stood at the far end of the table with a tablet in one hand and a sealed evidence bag in the other. Inside the bag, the crushed shell of one of the recovered drones. She didn't introduce herself. She just looked at the passenger and said, "Sit down, Mr. Voss." The man stopped moving. His eyes went to her face. Something shifted behind them. Not surprise exactly. Recognition. The kind that comes when you realize the person across from you already knows more than you planned on telling them. "You have my name," he said. "I have your file." Lynn set the tablet face up on the table. Daniel Voss, Senior Systems Engineer, former employee of Kestrel Systems, a private defense contractor based in Arlington, Virginia. Federal clearance, Level 3, issued 26 months ago and revoked 14 weeks later. She paused. "Sit down." Voss sat. Ryan took the chair nearest the door. Blaze settled beside him without being told, eyes on Voss, posture calm but present. Watching. Lynn pulled out the chair across from Voss and sat down with the ease of someone who had done this kind of conversation 100 times and had stopped finding it tense somewhere around conversation 30. "Tell me about the drones." Voss looked at his hands. He was quiet for a moment, and Ryan had the sense he was deciding not whether to talk, but where to start. There was a difference. People who were deciding whether to talk looked at the door. People deciding where to start looked at their hands. "Kestrel sold the contract as crowd behavior modeling," Voss said finally. "Passive systems, non-invasive. The pitch was airport safety, identifying stress clusters in high-volume passenger zones before they escalated. Predictive security." He stopped. That was the pitch. "And the reality?" Lind asked. The reality was surveillance architecture, autonomous, persistent, and completely off-book. Voss's voice was flat now, the way a voice gets when a person has already processed the worst of something and is now just reporting it. Those drones don't just read crowd behavior. They tag individuals. Gait recognition, thermal breath patterns, micro-expression mapping, device signal capture. They can follow a single person from the moment they enter a terminal to the moment they board. Everything gets uploaded to a central server. No consent, no oversight, no federal record. Ryan felt the temperature in the room shift. Not metaphorically. His body actually registered it. A tightening across the back of his neck. A stillness in his chest. "How many drones in a full deployment?" Lind asked. "Per hub? 40 to 60 units. Seeded through the environment over a span of 72 hours. Once they activate, they operate on a self-sustaining relay network. You'd never see them individually. They're too small, too quiet, and they're coded to suppress every standard security signature." "Then how are they in your bag?" Ryan asked. Voss looked at him. "Because I built them, and I knew how to keep them passive. I shielded them with signal-dampening lining and locked them in standby mode. The airport scanners were never going to find them. No machine was." He held Ryan's gaze for a moment. "But your dog did." The room was quiet. Lind made a note on her tablet without looking up. "You said the drones suppress standard security signatures. Walk me through that." "They're designed to read exactly like personal electronics to any passive scanner. Thermal profile matches a standard laptop battery array. Electromagnetic signature is calibrated to fall within commercial device parameters. The wiring pattern mimics a custom power bank. He paused. I helped design those calibrations. I know every frequency they're tuned to avoid.
And Blaze isn't tuned to frequencies, Ryan said quietly. Voss nodded once. He was reading me, not the bag. The stress chemistry, the cortisol, the microtremors in my grip. I've been carrying those drones for 4 days through 3 airports. And every day, every checkpoint, every scanner, I walked right through. He exhaled. Until today. Lind set her tablet down. Mr. Voss, you said you planned to get caught. I need you to explain exactly what that means. I tried to go through official channels first. I flagged the project internally. I submitted a concern report to Kestrel's compliance office. 2 days later, my credentials were suspended. A week after that, I was told I'd violated my NDA and that any external disclosure would result in criminal prosecution. He paused. I had documentation, internal communications, deployment schematics, the contract language that specifically prohibited congressional oversight. I needed that documentation to reach someone outside Kestrel's legal reach. A European civil liberties watchdog in Geneva had agreed to receive it and publish it under protected whistleblower status. And you couldn't ship the drones, Lind said. Any shipping manifest would be flagged. Kestrel has 3 former intelligence officers on retainer who monitor flagged freight. They would have intercepted the package before it cleared customs. He looked at his hands again. So I decided to carry them. And I decided that if I got stopped, if the right people opened that bag and saw what was inside, then at least the questions would start getting asked, even if I was the one in handcuffs when it happened. Ryan leaned forward. You were counting on being arrested? I was counting on someone not looking the other way. Voss's voice cracked slightly on the last word. He cleared his throat. That's a different thing. Lind picked up the tablet again. Her expression hadn't changed, but Ryan had been reading people long enough to notice that she was holding herself slightly more still than she had been 30 seconds ago. The way a person goes still when something they're hearing is confirming something they already suspected, and the confirmation is worse than the suspicion. The recovered drone fragments, she said carefully. Our tech team has been pulling the intact memory sectors for the past 40 minutes. She turned the tablet around and set it on the table in front of Voss. Is this the Kestrel server architecture? Voss looked at the screen. Something moved through his face fast and complicated. Where did you get that? The drone that your dog stopped at the departure board. It was mid-transmission when it was destroyed. We recovered 43% of the upload package. Lind pulled the tablet back. Mr. Voss, that server isn't located in the United States. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Ryan heard it before he understood it. He looked at Lind. What does that mean? It means the data these drones were collecting was never going to a domestic Kestrel server. Lind's voice was precise and controlled. It was routing through a private relay to an offshore architecture. We're still tracing the endpoint, but what we can confirm right now is that it is not a federal system, not a Kestrel-owned system, and not on any infrastructure we have on record for this contractor. Voss had gone pale. Not the managed pallor of a man who had prepared for a hard conversation. The real kind. I didn't know that, he said. I knew they were building an off-book database. I didn't know it was going offshore. Is it possible you were used? Lind asked. The word landed like a stone. Voss stared at the table. Ryan watched him process it. Watched the thing he thought he understood about his own situation rearrange itself into something larger and much colder. They told me the server was proprietary domestic infrastructure, Voss said slowly. Private, unregulated, but domestic. He stopped. If it's routing offshore, then whoever is buying access to this data, it's not just corporations. It's not just advertisers or security firms. He looked up. That's intelligence-level collection. That's foreign-facing surveillance architecture operating inside American airports. Blaze shifted beside Ryan. A single movement, ears rotating forward, body lifting slightly from the floor. Not a threat response, an awareness response. The same thing Ryan had seen in the pre-check lane that morning, when the dog had first caught something on the air that none of the machines could register. Ryan looked at his partner, and then back at Lind.
How many airports were in the deployment plan? Lind's jaw tightened. According to the contract fragments we've recovered, 12 initial hubs, domestic and international. The first 4 were scheduled for seeding next quarter. She paused. Harlow was not on the initial list. Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. Then why was Voss here? Lind looked at Voss. Voss looked at Ryan. And for a moment, nobody spoke, because the answer forming in the space between them was not the answer any of them had walked into this room expecting. Because someone knew I was coming to Geneva, Voss said quietly. And if Harlow wasn't on the deployment list, then those drones in my bag weren't going to Geneva. He stopped breathing for a half-second. They were already activated when I packed them. I thought I had them in standby mode, but if Kestrel knew my route, if they had someone reset the activation protocol remotely before I left the hotel, then I was never smuggling those drones out. His voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. I was carrying them in. The words landed in the room, and nobody moved. Ryan heard them twice, once when Voss said them, and once in the half-second of silence that followed, when his brain processed what they actually meant. Not smuggling them out, carrying them in. Lind was already on her feet. She had her phone in her hand before Voss finished the sentence, and the call she made was short, clipped, and spoken in a tone Ryan had never heard from her before. Not alarmed, controlled alarm, which was somehow worse. Pull every drone fragment we have in containment. I need a full activation log on each unit. Timestamps, signal events, anything that shows when they came out of standby. And I need it in 10 minutes. She ended the call and turned back to the table. Mr. Voss, walk me through exactly what you did with those drones the night before you traveled. Voss pressed both palms flat on the table, like he needed something solid to hold on to. I packed them myself. Hotel room in DC, the night before my flight. I checked each unit manually. Standby mode confirmed on all 20. I wrapped them in the signal dampening lining and packed them in the interior compartment of the carry-on. He stopped. The bag was in my room. I was in that room all night. I didn't leave. Did anyone else have access? No, I had the only keycard. A beat. But the hotel was booked through my former corporate account, Kestrel's travel management system. He looked at Lind. His face had gone the color of old paper. They would have had the reservation details, the room number, everything. Ryan leaned forward. Is it possible someone accessed your room while you were asleep? Voss didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look on his face was the answer. The look of a man reconstructing a night he thought he understood, and watching it become something entirely different under the new light of what he now knew. Lynn set her phone on the table. Here is what we know right now. 20 drones were in that carry-on. 2 escaped into the terminal before containment. Both were recovered. The second unit was mid-transmission when your dog destroyed it, and the upload destination was an offshore server we have not yet identified. She paused. Here is what we don't know. Whether the remaining 18 units completed any data capture before Blaze flagged you in the pre-check lane. Those units were in the bag for however long you were in this terminal before Ryan stopped you. Ryan's jaw tightened. How long was he in the terminal before we hit the pre-check lane? Voss checked his watch with the mechanical movement of someone trying to do something useful with their hands. I arrived at Harlow at 5:48. I went through ticketing, dropped a checked bag, used the restroom near the food court. I was in the terminal for approximately 22 minutes before I reached pre-check. 22 minutes. Ryan looked at Blaze. Blaze was already looking at him. 22 minutes of active drones moving through a morning terminal. Gate areas, food court, ticketing lines. The family with the stroller he'd passed near Gate 9. The school group. The elderly couple near the wheelchair assistance desk. Every face, every device signal, every thermal breath signature within range of that bag, cataloged and transmitted to a server none of them could currently locate. Lind read his expression accurately. We're pulling the terminal's own surveillance footage to map Voss's path from ticketing to pre-check. We'll identify every zone those drones pass through and cross-reference with the partial data we recovered from the destroyed units.
And the people in those zones? Ryan asked.
We'll notify them through the appropriate federal channels. Her voice was careful. That process takes time. Those are real people, Ryan said. Some of them are already on planes. I know that. The door opened. A younger Homeland agent stepped in and handed Lind a single printed sheet without a word. She read it in 4 seconds, and something changed in her face. Small, but unmistakable. The activation logs, she said. The drones came out of standby at 4:17 a.m., approximately 90 minutes before Voss packed them. She set the sheet on the table and turned it so he could read it. They were never in standby mode when you packed them, Mr. Voss. They had been active for an hour and a half. You carried 20 active surveillance drones through your hotel lobby, into a taxi, through curbside check-in, and into this terminal. And you had no idea. Voss stared at the sheet for a long time.
When he looked up, his eyes were red at the edges. Not from crime, from the particular exhaustion of a man who has been fighting something for months, and has just discovered the thing he was fighting was also fighting him in a direction he never saw. They used me, he said. Yes. I thought I was exposing them. His voice dropped. I was helping them run a field test. Nobody spoke. Blaze shifted beside Ryan, stood slowly, and walked to the edge of the table nearest Voss. He didn't put his head in the man's lap, didn't make a sound. He simply stood close, and Voss looked down at him with an expression that Ryan couldn't fully name, something between gratitude and grief. Lind gave it exactly 10 seconds. Then she pulled her chair back out and sat down. Mr. Voss, I need you to stay with me because what I'm about to tell you changes the shape of this entire operation, and I need your help understanding it. Voss pulled his eyes from Blaze. What? The offshore server architecture our tech team is tracing. They've identified the relay node. It's routing through a commercial data brokerage registered in Luxembourg. That company has 2 known clients in the past 18 months. One is a private political consulting firm operating in 6 countries. The other is a foreign national security apparatus we are not going to name in this room. She let that sit for exactly 1 breath. This was never about selling biometric data to advertisers or building a domestic security database. The data those drones were collecting was going to people with very specific reasons to want facial recognition data on American federal employees, law enforcement personnel, and elected officials moving through major transit hubs. Ryan heard the words individually, and then heard them together, and felt the floor shift slightly under where he was standing. They weren't building a surveillance product, he said. No, Lind said. They were building an intelligence asset, and they needed a field test in a live environment with real passenger volume. Harlow gets 43,000 travelers through Terminal C on a Friday morning. She looked at Voss. You were the delivery mechanism, and you were chosen specifically because if anything went wrong, the entire operation could be attributed to a disgruntled former employee acting alone. Voss made a sound that wasn't quite a word. He pressed one hand over his mouth for a moment. Then he lowered it and said, very quietly, "My daughter flies through this airport." The room went absolutely still. She flies unaccompanied, twice a month. Gate agent walks her to the seat. His voice was steady, but only barely. She's 8 years old. She sits in 14C because she likes the window, and she's small enough that the tray table doesn't hit her knees. He stopped. "I've been trying for 4 months to stop something that was going to scan her face and sell it to people I can't even name in this room. And instead, I walked it straight through the front door." Ryan looked at his partner. Blaze was still standing beside Voss, not moving, amber eyes forward, breathing slow and even. He thought about what Blaze had read in that pre-check line. Not the bag, not the wiring, not the thermal signatures, or the suppressed electromagnetic profile. The man. The fear underneath the practiced smile. The grief under the controlled posture. The cortisol of someone who had been carrying something terrible for a very long time, and whose body had finally reached the limit of how well it could hide that weight. Blaze had felt all of it from 40 feet away through a crowded morning terminal, and had planted himself and refused to move. Ryan reached down and put one hand on the dog's back. Lynn stood again and moved to the door. She spoke to the agent outside for 30 seconds in a voice too low to hear, then came back in and addressed Voss directly. "You are not being charged. You are being designated a material federal witness under protective protocol. That means you go nowhere alone starting right now. Your communication devices are secured, and you are moved to a safe location pending a full debrief that is going to take several days." She paused. "It also means you are protected from Kestrel, from whoever is above Kestrel, and from whatever they plan to do with you once this field test was complete." Voss nodded slowly. "What happens to the data that was already collected? The 22 minutes?" Lynn's expression didn't change. "That's above my clearance level to answer." "That's not an answer." "No," she said. "It isn't." She picked up her tablet. "Agent Torres will take you to a secure holding area in 10 minutes. You'll have water, food, and a phone call to whoever you need to call." She paused at the door. "Mr. Voss, for what it's worth, the drones Kestrel sent into this terminal today did not complete their transmission. The data they captured in 22 minutes is fragmentary, and the only reason the second unit didn't finish its upload is because a police dog bit it out of the air 1 inch from a ventilation shaft." She looked at Blaze. 1 inch. She left. Ryan sat in the silence for a moment. Voss was staring at the table again. Blaze had settled back onto the floor, head resting on his front paws, eyes half closed, but ears still faintly tracking the sounds beyond the door. "Can I ask you something?" Voss said, without looking up. "Go ahead." "When he stopped me in the line, your dog," he finally looked up. "He wasn't going to move, was he? No matter what anyone said to him." Ryan thought about Supervisor Chen's voice, about the line backing up, about the 20 people with connecting flights and laptops and coffee cups, and the morning weight of their ordinary lives piling up behind one man and one dog who had simply stopped. "No," Ryan said. "He wasn't." Voss nodded, and something in his face loosened slightly, just slightly, for the first time since they'd brought him into this room. "Good," he said, "because I needed someone who wasn't going to look the other way." He looked at Blaze. "I just didn't expect it to be a dog." Ryan didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Because outside this room, the full weight of what they had uncovered today was just beginning to move through the channels that would determine what happened next. Federal warrants, sealed depositions, server traces running through Luxembourg and beyond. A contractor whose name was about to become very public in the worst possible way.
And somewhere in all of it, 43,000 people who had moved through Terminal C that morning and had no idea how close their faces had come to ending up in a database they would never be told about, in the hands of people they would never be able to name. 1 inch from a ventilation shaft. 1 dog who refused to heal. Agent Torres came for Voss at exactly 11 minutes after Lind left the room. Ryan watched him go. Voss stood at the door, carry-on gone, phone gone. The only thing left of the man who had walked into Terminal C that morning, the same gray jacket, and the particular exhaustion that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long, and finally being allowed to put it down. He stopped at the threshold and looked back at Blaze. He didn't say anything, just looked at the dog for a long moment, with the expression of someone memorizing a face. Then he nodded once, short and honest, and walked out. The door closed. Ryan sat in the empty room for a moment, with his hand resting on Blaze's back, listening to the building around them breathe. Distant PA announcements had resumed in the terminal. The lockdown had lifted from the 2 sealed gates. 43,000 people moving through their Friday, with no idea what had passed within 3 feet of them that morning. His radio crackled. Lynn's voice, flat and direct. "Holt, operations conference room, now." The conference room in the operations wing had 6 people in it when Ryan arrived. Lind at the head of the table. 2 additional Homeland agents he didn't recognize. Supervisor Chen near the back wall, arms crossed, saying nothing, looking like a man who had spent the last 4 hours recalculating everything he thought he knew about this morning. A tech specialist named Okafor, who had a laptop open and 3 separate windows running simultaneously. And a man in a dark suit who had not been introduced and who Ryan understood without being told was not going to be introduced. Okafor spoke first. "We've completed the activation log analysis on all 20 drone units. 18 of those units were in active capture mode from 4:17 a.m. through the moment of containment in room B3. That's approximately 2 hours and 21 minutes of active operation." He paused. "Based on terminal traffic patterns and Voss's route, we estimate those 18 units captured usable biometric data on between 460 and 520 individual passengers." Ryan heard the number and felt it settle in his chest, like something physical. 460 people. 520. Real names, real faces, real lives, moving through a morning they would remember as ordinary. "How much of that data transmitted successfully?" Lind asked. The 18 units in the bag never had a clear transmission window. The signal dampening lining Voss used actually worked against the remote activation. They captured data, but couldn't upload it. Okafor looked up. The 2 units that escaped containment were the only ones with a clear line to the relay. Unit 1, the one destroyed near Gate 14, transmitted for approximately 11 seconds before K9 Blaze intercepted it. Partial facial data on an estimated 31 individuals. He stopped. Unit 2 was at 23 seconds of a 30-second upload cycle when it was destroyed at the departure board. The room went very quiet. 23 seconds, Ryan said. Yes. Out of 30. Correct. Okafor's voice was steady. 7 seconds from a completed transmission. The data package from Unit 2 would have included thermal biometric profiles, device identification signals, and high-resolution facial geometry on an estimated 88 passengers. All of it bound for the offshore relay. He paused. None of it completed the transfer.
The upload was severed mid-cycle when the unit was physically destroyed. The man in the dark suit, who had not spoken and had not been introduced, said quietly, "Because of the dog." It wasn't a question. Everyone in the room heard it as what it was, a statement of fact being entered into the record of the moment by someone whose job was to make sure facts like this did not get lost. Lynn nodded. Because of the dog. Ryan looked down at Blaze, who was sitting beside his left boot with his usual economy of movement, ears tracking the voices in the room, amber eyes moving from face to face with the calm attention of someone following a conversation in a language they understand perfectly. "What happens now?" Ryan asked. "To Kestrel. To the people above Kestrel." Lynn picked up a sealed folder from the table and set it back down without opening it. A federal warrant for Kestrel Systems records was served at their Arlington offices at 9:52 this morning. Their servers are being imaged as we speak. 3 of their senior executives are being interviewed by the FBI, simultaneously, in separate locations, as of 40 minutes ago. She paused. The foreign relay node is a matter of ongoing interagency work that I'm not going to detail in this room. And the 460 people whose data was captured but never transmitted? They will be notified individually through a federal process. Their data exists only on hardware that is now in our custody. The moment we confirm no secondary backup exists, that data will be destroyed under federal evidence protocol. How long does that take? Lynn's expression told him the answer before she said it. Longer than any of us would like. Chen spoke from the back wall for the first time. His voice was quieter than usual. "For what it's worth, Holt, I owe you an apology. I told you to move the dog." Ryan looked at him. Chen had the face of a man who had been doing this job for 20 years and had just had a morning that reorganized everything. "You were managing a backed-up lane at 6 in the morning?" Ryan said. "You didn't have what Blaze had." "What did he have?" Ryan considered the question seriously, the way it deserved. He didn't have a checklist. He just had the truth of what he was reading, and enough trust in himself to refuse to walk away from it. He paused. "That's not nothing." Chen nodded slowly. "No, it isn't." Okafor cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." He turned his laptop around so the room could see the screen. "We cross-referenced the Kestrel employee travel logs from the past 8 months against anomalous scanner flags at 12 major domestic hubs: Denver, Seattle, Portland, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix." He looked up. In every case, Kestrel employees traveling on supposed client demonstration trips passed through security without triggering a single alert. The drones they were carrying were fully functional. They were running field tests, progressively expanding the operational range, refining the capture algorithms, testing the upload relay under real terminal conditions. "How many tests?" Lind asked. "We've confirmed 11 separate operations over 8 months. This morning would have been the 12th. And based on the deployment timeline we recovered from Voss's documentation, the next phase was a simultaneous multi-hub activation. 12 airports, same day, coordinated seeding through multiple carriers." He paused. It was scheduled for 63 days from today. The number hit the room like a door closing. 63 days. Ryan thought about that number. 63 days, and whatever had been close to operational this morning would have been running in 12 airports simultaneously, in the hands of people whose names were rooting through Luxembourg and beyond, in a database built on the faces of people who had no idea they were being watched. He thought about Voss's daughter, 8 years old, seat 14C, tray table that didn't hit her knees. He looked at Blaze. Blaze looked back at him with the steady, amber patience of an animal that had done its job and was waiting.
without urgency or need for recognition, simply waiting to do it again. The man in the dark suit stood and buttoned his jacket. "The incident report from this morning will be classified at the appropriate level, pending the ongoing investigation. Officer Holt, your formal statement will be taken in the next 24 hours. He picked up his briefcase. "One thing I want on the record before I leave this room." He looked at Ryan. "The instinct-based intervention at 06:14 hours this morning by K9 Unit Blaze prevented the completion of a foreign intelligence collection operation on American soil. Every machine in this terminal cleared that passenger. Every protocol said he was clean." He paused at the door. "The dog said otherwise, and the handler listened to the dog. That decision is the reason this morning ended the way it did, and not the way it was designed to." He left. The room exhaled. Ryan walked out of the operations wing an hour later, into the cool air beyond the terminal doors. The afternoon had arrived without anyone noticing, the way afternoons do on days when time stops meaning what it usually means. The sun was low, and the light came in at a long angle that made everything look a little more permanent than it was. Blaze padded beside him, unhurried, tail flicking once at a child who pointed from a passing family. The child said something to her mother. The mother looked at Blaze, and then at Ryan, and then back at Blaze, with the particular expression of someone who had been inside the terminal that morning and felt the shift in the air without understanding its source. Ryan crouched beside his partner, put one hand flat on the dog's chest, felt the steady rhythm underneath his palm, the deep, unhurried heartbeat of an animal that had launched itself 6 feet into the air, bitten a drone out of the sky, predicted a trajectory no human eye could have calculated, and refused to leave his post in a pre-check lane when every person with authority told him to move. "You know what you did today," Ryan said quietly. Blaze turned his head and looked at him. Amber eyes, calm and full, and completely without doubt. "You stopped something we couldn't even see. And you did it the only way it could have been done. You just refused to pretend you didn't know what you knew." Blaze held his gaze for a long moment. Then he turned back toward the terminal doors, ears forward, posture easy, ready. Because the shift was not over. It was never over. Not for a dog who understood, in the wordless and absolute way of an animal whose entire existence is built on truth, that the most dangerous things in this world are never the ones the machines can find. They are the ones that move through the crowd like shadows, dressed in the ordinary, carrying the weight of what they are in the tight grip of a hand on a strap and the flicker of a smile that almost looks real. Blaze had known the moment that man stepped into line, and that knowing, that refusal to be argued out of it, to be managed or redirected or told to stand down, had been the only thing standing between 63 days and the morning that almost was. Some things cannot be scanned. Some truths cannot be measured. Some loyalty runs deeper than any protocol ever written. And on an ordinary Friday morning in Terminal C, a 25-year-old officer in a dark Navy uniform listened to his dog. And the dog did not let him down.